This special NBA playoffs episode of The Old Man and the Three is presented by State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. When you hear those words, you can feel good knowing that State Farm is there to help you feel supported with the coverage you need for your car, your home, even boats, motorcycles, RVs, and all the things that matter to you. With a State Farm agent, you know someone is there to help protect your future by helping you choose the coverage you need. With so many insurance options, it feels good knowing you can find what fits you. Maybe you like to handle things in person or on the phone with your local agent, or you prefer to do it on statefarm.com or on their award-winning app. State Farm lets you do things your way. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. All right, welcome to a special live edition of The Old Man and the Three, presented by State Farm. This is Finals Eve, and yes, I am in a hotel room in Boston. In some ways, I can't believe that we've gotten to this point. I cannot believe that we have gotten to this point in the NBA season. There has been so much that has happened. There has been so much discourse, so many great plays, great moments of the NBA season. And here we are a day before the NBA Finals. Does it feel like this season has been long to you? Because this feels like a very long NBA season. I mean, I remember Joel Embiid going on his heaters early in the season prior to his injury. I remember at one point saying that Chet Holmgren was going to win the Rookie of the Year. Think about Victor Wembanyama. We haven't talked about Victor Wembanyama in 2 months, and it feels like we haven't talked about him in 2 years. There was a NBA analyst that took over midseason to coach a team in the hopes of winning a championship. There was discourse galore following the All-Star break and the All-Star game where there was no defense played. How long ago was that? I mean, by the calendar, it was less than 4 months ago. This NBA season has been filled with so much stuff. And here we are, the day before the NBA Finals, and we've got the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. And if you think about the Boston Celtics, from the moment they traded for Kristaps Porzingis, it felt like they were potentially the favorites to get out of the East. And then Damian Lillard gets traded to the Bucks. Drew Holiday ends up with the Boston Celtics. And what I've loved about the Boston Celtics this season has been their approach. They have not taken any moment for granted. They approached the regular season with a purpose. They approached the playoffs with a purpose. They have dominated in some ways. It's interesting. I think about as a former athlete, someone who studies the NBA, somebody who watches the NBA, somebody who's very invested in the NBA. And I think about the life cycle, and it goes back to what I'm talking about, just the time it takes to get to this point and the disappointment that the Boston Celtics had in not reaching the NBA Finals last season, coming off an NBA Finals berth and losing to the Golden State Warriors. The amount of energy and focus and commitment it takes to have the regular season that they had, to have the playoffs that they've had, to get back to this point. It requires a lot. And it's a credit to their group. It's a credit to Joe Mazzulla. The fact that they have, I wouldn't even say they've weathered storms, but the fact that they have just remained steady and played the right way, built a culture, built an identity to get to this point. It's a credit to them. And then there's the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks, who for much of the regular season were a 500-ish team, right? Hovering above 500. And we focused a lot, of course, as we always do, on the Lakers. We focused a lot on the Golden State Warriors because of LeBron James, because of Steph Curry. There were moments where we talked about the Los Angeles Clippers, the LA Clippers, sorry, as title contenders. Of course, we felt throughout the season, Denver's going to win the West. Denver's going to be back. And then you had the Oklahoma City Thunder emerging as a true contender. You had the Minnesota Timberwolves make an awesome run to the Western Conference Finals, and they beat the Denver Nuggets. And the Dallas Mavericks are the team that made it out of the West. And you think about the Mavericks. The Mavericks beat the LA Clippers, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Minnesota Timberwolves to get here. That is 3 50-win teams. 3 50-win teams. A 51-win team in the LA Clippers, I believe it was 57-win team with the Thunder, a 56-win team with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're the first team to reach the NBA Finals by beating 3 50-win teams on the path to the finals. They're the first team to do this since the 2010 LA Lakers. And of course, the Lakers went on to win the championship. You think about what Boston has been through to get here, not just this season, but certainly in the past. 6 conference championships appearances for Jaylen Brown, 5 for Jayson Tatum, the finals berth in 22. Both these teams are battle tested. And yes, I recognize that the Boston Celtics played the Miami Heat without Jimmy Butler. And yes, I recognize the Boston Celtics played the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were banged up in the second round. And yes, I recognize that Tyrese Haliburton got hurt in the Eastern Conference Finals. But in the aggregate, the Boston Celtics, this group and everything they've been through, they are battle tested. Of course, the Dallas Mavericks are battle tested. I truly believe that we are in for an all-time classic finals. We are in for an all-time classic finals. Both these teams have an identity. You're talking about 2 of the best defenses in the league, primarily for Dallas after the trade for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Boston, of course, has been one of the top 5 defenses all season, was the second best defense in the regular season, the best offense in the regular season. You think about the wizardry, the magic of Luka, the wizardry of Kyrie Irving, the fact that both these teams in the regular season were the highest volume 3-point shooting teams. And I believe that we are in for an all-time classic finals. I really do. And I'm going to tell you more about this and why I think this on the other side of the break.
When you get a new car or a new home, to get the insurance help you need, just say the jingle. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. State Farm is there with the coverage you need for your car, your home, and even boats, motorcycles, RVs, and other things that matter to you. With State Farm, you have options to fit your unique needs, which means you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need. You can have coverage options to protect the things you value most. You can file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, or you can reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. So when you need help protecting the things that matter most, remember to say, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
All right. So many storylines in this finals. Of course, you've got a guy like Drew Holiday who gets traded just before training camp. He's a former champion. Kristaps Porzingis, who has been on a few teams, gets traded to the Boston Celtics. He, to me, is the ultimate sort of X factor in this series. Talk about the Boston Celtics. Everything that they've done in their careers to get to this point, this group, they've talked about it all season. All we want to do is win a championship. Ultimately, we'll all be judged by whether or not we win a championship. And it comes down to this. I want to do a quick good neighbor segment. It's time for the State Farm Good Neighbor segment of the show. There's a lot to say when buying a new home or car, but only one thing to say that can help you protect them. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And just like that, State Farm is there to help you choose the coverage you need. Well, who do you think are the best neighbors, the good neighbors for the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks? Well, of course, it's their stars. We have spent a ton of time breaking down this series over the last week or so. We have talked about the different matchups. We have talked about the different coverages. We have talked about the different storylines. But I want to talk about Luka Doncic and Jayson Tatum, the good neighbors of this series. Luka and Jayson lead their teams respectively in points, rebounds, and assists during the playoffs. They are just the 5th and 6th players to make the NBA Finals, leading their team in points, rebounds, and assists. Luka Doncic in particular, I want to talk about this for a second. Luka Doncic in particular was the NBA scoring champion. He's the first NBA scoring champion. It is the most points per game by a scoring champion to reach the NBA Finals since Rick Barry in 1966, 1967. Why do I bring that up? Because we have talked, and I have been part of this dialogue. We have talked about whether or not Luka's style of play can win an NBA championship. We have talked about whether or not Luka's style of play can get the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals. He's got a very high usage rate. He controls the game. I think he's answered the question. Certainly, you need the supporting cast around him. You need sort of the perfect complement and the perfect running mate, which Kyrie Irving is. But I think he's answered the questions. He had an MVP-esque regular season, certainly was deserving of any vote that he got for the MVP in the regular season. But this is a guy, to me, that is perfectly suited and perfectly built for playoff basketball. He loves physicality. He can control the pace when needed. He can play in the half court. He has shown a willingness to give the go-ahead or throw-ahead pass and let his guys go operate in transition. When you go against this Boston Celtics team, there are not a lot of weak points defensively. It's one of the reasons they are where they are. It's one of the reasons they have the team that they have. They have the record that they have. They're just not weak points defensively. Luka doesn't care. Luka wants every single matchup. Luka, he's going to target certain people, but Luka is more than comfortable operating against any Celtic that guards him. And that's what makes him special. That's what makes him special. He has the size, he has the strength, he has the skill. He can score against anyone. He can facilitate against anyone. He has a computer in his brain that can make any read against any coverage. It's what makes him so freaking good. And he, to me, is perfectly built for the playoffs. On the other side of that, Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum, look, I think it's remarkable what he's been able to accomplish to this point in his career. He is now the second leading scorer in terms of total points in the playoffs prior to the age of turning 26. He has done it at a high level since his rookie year, going back to 2018, when the Boston Celtics took LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers to the Eastern Conference Finals, Game 7. He has done it in the playoffs. He has had big moments, certainly like any player. We talked about this on Islands in the League. Like any player, he's had some bad games in the playoffs. Who hasn't? Who hasn't? It feels like for Jayson Tatum, getting back to this point is just another sort of tip in the cap, another marker of his greatness, of his career. And ultimately, for both these guys, for both these good neighbors, an NBA championship would be the ultimate. And particularly for the Boston Celtics, who are tied with the Los Angeles Lakers for the most NBA titles in for a franchise in NBA history. Jayson Tatum has a chance to cement his legacy as an all-time Celtics great. You think about, I mean, I do these Celtics games, and you think about some of these stats we get in our notes. Jayson Tatum, most points per game ever in the regular season for a Celtic. He surpasses Larry Bird. Jayson Tatum, here's his averages for the conference semifinals. Jayson Tatum, here's his averages for a playoff run. The only player that's ever done this in Celtics history, Larry Bird. Larry Bird. It always comes up Larry Bird. Now, Larry Bird, of course, won 3 MVPs. He won some NBA championships in the 1980s, and he's considered one of the greatest players of all time, as he should be. For Jayson Tatum, there's like one thing missing. This is a guy who's made 3 straight first-team All-NBAs. Luka Doncic has made 5 first-team All-NBAs. For both these guys, that crown of being the best player on the best team. There's not many guys in the NBA right now. There's 6 of those guys, active players right now in the NBA, that can say, I was the best player on the best team. And Luka and Jayson now have an opportunity to be the 7th. It's an incredible moment for their career. It's an incredible moment for basketball. I am so excited about these NBA finals. I want to thank again State Farm for sponsoring these videos throughout the NBA season. When you have questions on coverage options, your State Farm agent is there to help on the phone or in person. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Of course, we will have a ton of content. I will be calling these NBA finals. We will have a ton of content throughout this series. If you don't already, please hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Thanks again to State Farm. This has been a special live Old Man of the 3. I can't wait for tomorrow. We'll talk to you guys soon.